new excursion tonight, and as I explained in the flyer that I sent out, Christopher is the great grandson of a past master of the company. His great grandfather was master in 1891. We haven't established why he actually joined the glass sellers, and we haven't found a link. However, I can tell you that having spoken to Christopher, William Sugg sort of dynasty has lasted for over 180 years. So on that measure, I would ask you to mute yourselves so that Christopher has a full run. I will now hand over to Christopher, and the floor is yours to entertain us with your story.
A world of gaslighting, cooking, heating, and Victorian engineering, concentrating on the earlier years. It's a family and a company involved in gas since the earliest days, innovated, introduced many gas appliances over 132 years of its independent existence. Early history. Give you just a little background. This is a little illustration of a man called Thomas Shirley, who found some natural gas wells near Wigan in 1659, and he's looking, wondering whether there's any reason for it. These, of course, simply come up from coal seams and so on. And this is the Reverend Clayton, who found that by putting coal in his kettle, produced gas which he lit, and he would demonstrate this to various visitors, and that was about 1688. William Murdoch actually started to use gas for lighting in his house in Redruth in 1792, but it wasn't until F.A. Windsor, who was later anglicised to Frederick Albert Windsor, demonstrated gas for lighting at the Lyceum in 1803 and 4. It's said that the gas was burnt in such an impure state. Belgian, I think, or certainly had a very foreign accent. He could not make anybody understand very much, so this was a little tricky, but nevertheless he was determined to make something of this. The demonstration of gas lighting was set up, and Rowlandson, who was a cartoonist, did some wonderful illustrations, and a couple of things up there. So this chap down here, the bloke with the blue thing is trying to tell everybody how good it is. The man who's looking at him says, "Arr, if this man brings fire through water, we shall soon have all the pretty little herrings and whales burnt to cinders." And this lady of the night over here is saying, "If this light is not put a stop to, we must give up our business. If the roads would be forever dug up, and the tallow chandlers would be out of a job. Protectionism, perhaps?" This is a lecture that William Sugg, The Great Gas Industry, which made its public appearance in London in my grandfather's time on the 21st January 1807, when Pall Mall was lighted with gas and he made the first gas pipes and fitted Carlton House. Did 48. William would only have been, this is William Thomas, I perhaps haven't shown you clearly, but the first man is called Thomas, the one who started the company is William, and the one who lives through the Victorian era is William Thomas. So William Thomas went to work with his father, and he would only have been 16 at that point in time. And this is the unveiling of the plaque to Windsor in Pall Mall that we did in June 2007. Obviously the buildings are no longer in the right place, but we got it as close as we could. And you'll see here there's a man suitably dressed with a lamplighter's torch, and we have the lady, deputy mayor, I think she was, and this chap is the one-time chairman of the Institute of Gas Engineers. And the green thing says, the green plaque says, Frederick Windsor, 1763 to 1830, gave the world's first demonstration of street lighting by coal gas from a retort located here. Now, a retort is an oven in which the coal is cooked and the gas driven off. Other people had already used gas only individually, a bit like we've just seen individually in a house, and there were some factory situations, but this was the first time that a retort was used with pipework to some gas lights. There's William Sugg, 1803 to 1860, who founded the company. Do you see this thing that's in my, if I move it about, do you see that moving about?
Yes.
You do. I'm trying to get it out of the way because it's a bit of annoying. I don't think there's any way. Anyway, I'm sorry. Let's just carry on. So, this is the first Sugg factory in Marsham Street. Marsham Street, of course, is right next door to where the first gas works was made as well. So, he obviously had in mind gas from the very beginning. And the Marsham Street factory lasted from 1837 to 1866. And this is probably a picture inside that particular factory. It was some postcard I found somewhere, but before I was really putting this thing together, years and years ago, but they're all gas lamps of the Sugg type, so I know that it's relevant. And here's his son, William Thomas, in 1864, age 32, 4 years into taking on the company following the early death of his father from cholera at 57. And he moved the business to Regency Street, which is not very far away, and set up shop in what looks like a domestic premises. Sorry. I beg your pardon, it's going backwards in the wrong direction. Here we go. Let me just, sorry about that. Okay. Yes, so it looks as if it's a block of houses, and they've snuck it in the middle, and they put their name up the top. So that's from the beginnings. Right. And it's not easy to see on this particular one, but this is Regency Street running north-south there, and this is Vincent Square. And these two are marked as being gasometers of the Gaslight and Coke Company. Just as a sort of side issue, they were called gasometers originally because, in fact, they allowed people to measure the amount of gas, so they were a gas meter. No, that was pretty inaccurate, of course, because the top of the gasometer moves up and down fairly slowly, so you only had an indication of your usage, which is why anybody who knows anything now calls all gasometers gas holders, because that's what they are. And it wasn't until a little later that the gas meter was invented. That's the enlarged Vincent Works, and you can see this building on the left and the building on the right are still the same buildings, and they've squeezed it in. But in fact, I think there's still some stuff going on in this one, so exactly what happened there I don't know. And in the opening, they had the family and top management were photographed on the roof to celebrate the opening. And this, of course, in the middle is William Sugg. Quite a few of those people are family. William had, well, he actually had 15 children in the end, but sorry. Right, he actually had 15 children. 12 by his second French wife, and 3 from an earlier wife, which is the story of the day. not going to talk about. When the building was pulled down, we actually retained the foundation stone, and it got moved to the factory. First of all, the factory that the Williamsburg Company had, and later to my factory, which was also in Crawley, but after the original Williamsburg Company had been taken over. It says 13th of August 1887, and I don't know. Lovejoy is an architect that I looked up but couldn't find anything relevant. So, but we all heard of John Molam, so we know a little bit about who built the factory. Oh, that's the Sug factory in Crawley that they moved to from Westminster, and the extension was officially opened in 1965. It's still there, but without the Sug name, and of course it now feeds the millions who go on aeroplanes. The whole factory, it's actually got a rooftop car park. It's the only factory in Crawley with a rooftop car park. And the rest of it is a big space that I had to lay out as a young man when we moved the factory. So gas lighting for streets. This is typical of the 1850s, 60s, 70s and 80s, and as you can see, they're all using open flames. And the oldest one here, you see, is in a sort of cradle. We call that a basket cradle, which follows exactly the principle of the oil lamp, which could be lifted out in order to maintain it and clean it and so on, because oil lamps got extremely dirty. Initially, the burners that were put in them were stuck straight up through the bottom, and you could still lift it out. But by the time we get to this particular picture, you can see that maybe you don't realize that the bottom of the lamp is actually filled in order to reduce the air movements and so on. And the early ones all have these, we call them frogs. They're basically the outward turned shape like that, which stands between the top of the post and clamps it onto the post. And later on, as gas taps and things became things that they wanted to get at, the frogs were turned outward. So you have inward-facing frogs and outward-facing frogs. And this is typical of a lamp which we call the Lambeth lamp, and that's 1878. So in order to get more light, you had to have bigger burners. The demand for light went up and up and up. And of course, if you put a very big burner into a lamp, you will heat it up hugely. In fact, you'll heat it up so far that you'd melt it, or you'd melt you'd melt the whole thing if you're not careful. And that picture shows you some 100 candle power globe lamps, which are 3 foot in diameter. And this is just a typical burner. Shows you the sort of thing that might be put in, not in one of those, but in some others. This is a page out of one of the wonderful books showing these really very handsome lamps with their not only their sizes, height 5'9", diameter 3'9", length 7'3", diameter 4'2", £3.15, you know, and so on. You think, gosh, isn't that incredible? And just to show you that these things still exist, this lamp is in Happy Valley in Llandudno, and we discovered it some years ago, well, probably 20, 25 years ago, and here it is when we found it, and it had stopped being used on gas a long time ago, and they'd clamped on spotlights and all sorts of things, and we managed to persuade them to take it back to the factory. And this is me in a younger age standing by it, so you can get some idea of the scale. And the picture on the right was taken by a friend who was in Llandudno only last year, so it's nice to see that it's well looked after, and it's got an extra bit of frame around it because it is a very exposed spot, as you might imagine. There's lots of information about lighting, of course. We have, this is a particular book, Daylight by Night in 1931, record of modern installations, and it's been compiled for the Second International Congress of the International Commission on Illumination, held in Great Britain, September 31. And it says the pictures show how gas is used with brilliant effect to light the busiest and most famous streets of London, the main roads of provincial cities, and the promenades of fashionable spas. A recent investigation into mileage showed that 4/5 of the streets in Great Britain are illuminated by gas. The examples shown are typical of the best modern gas practice. These are just colour pictures. Most of it's full of black and white pictures showing different applications. But there we are, 1931, we are still 4/5 gaslit. So let's have a little look at some rather unusual aspects of the whole thing. These are what are called sunburners. Now, when we have all these very large flames and all this heat, this also got translated into interiors. Large interiors were frequently lit by flames in substantial devices hanging from the ceiling. If you take the bottom left-hand corner, you can see how basic it can get. This is a ring with a series of jets in it and a pipe which goes up to carry some of the products away through to the roof. And there are some other wonderful ones. And the problem, of course, was that the heat from above was jolly hard on the people below. So starting with various manufacturers produced ventilating sunburners. So what happens, of course, is that the heat is carried away, and at the same time, by carrying away the heat from the flames, you're also able to draw heat in through all these wonderful pieces of ventilation that you see around the edges. And this one has got a set of pierced work, and there's a whole lot of literature and stuff showing these sort of things. And they were often called sunlights. Sometimes they were simply called sunburners. But one of the intriguing thing about it is that they're such colossal items, and they're so often part of the fabric of the building that many of them survive to this day. All of these actually still exist, except I don't know about the top right-hand one. It's only one I found just the other day and thought, well, I'll pop it in. But this here is Birmingham. In Birmingham, I think it's the library actually, and they've obviously extended them down in order to try and pull the air up, and the rest of the hot air goes up through those little slots there. So that's sunburners. And here are some drawings. I had some difficulty with this one on the left. It's so long. I know it says it's 1 inch to 1 foot, but when I tried to photograph it, well, it was I couldn't scan it because it's about 4 or 5 feet long. In order to give you the full size, you unfolded it. The one here is interesting, as it is as used in the Grand Committee rooms of the House of Commons. And you can also see here how they were able to manage this arrangement between floors and actually take a sideways chimney out to the daylight. I always got a bit worried about that, and I did come across somebody who had done a lot of exercise in this, and they found that over the top they used to put a slab of stone or something similar. So that provided them with another way of protecting the wood floor above. And there is the Houses of Parliament. This is a section here showing through where everybody's sitting, and this is the sort of ventilation arrangement that was done by William, who I must remember this another time not to put things too close to the bottom, but he received the Society's premium for his paper on this particular subject in 1895. In addition to using gas to ventilate these big rooms, there was also ways of ventilating other locations. So we've got railway carriages, horse-drawn carriages, sailing boats, and looks like a steam-operated boat. And in this one, of course, you can see they've used it for a fire. And this amazing thing here is actually the top, which would be outside the building, and it's staggering to see just what sort of detail they would go into for something put on a roof. So nothing was ever skipped through. They did it all properly. And amazingly, we discover that his expertise in ventilation was called on by the government and the Navy in order to ventilate torpedo boat destroyers, which of course, as we all know, go at a huge pace, and there's water everywhere, and they found it extremely difficult to ventilate. So what we've got is the inlets up there and the outlets down there. So if you look at it, you can see how the way the flaps go up and down and so on. But an extraordinary thing to add to his catalogue of items, which he actually put in a catalogue. So there we go. These other ones are just earlier versions, ships, updrafts, and so on. So gas lighting for interiors. So we go back to the beginning and we look at flames, and these flames were, the original one was just a hole in a pipe, and steadily the development of flames of a different shape in order to produce more light, the obvious one being a flat flame, which has got more light coming off sideways than, well, the face of it's much lighter than the edge, so you could actually use it for lighting better in one direction than the other. 2004 is because that picture that was used for a calendar. This fella here is an Argand burner, and I think we can probably no, that's the next one. Here is an Argand burner. You can see more of it here, and it's Argand is the sort of burner that you would find in an oil lamp. Even today you can find it, and what it is a circular flame. And Monsieur Émile Argand invented this particular burner, and William Sugg then adapted it for use in gas. And what it does is it has a circular burner with a series of holes, and the air comes up the inside through the middle and also around the outside, so it burns extremely well. I'm going to go back one, because here we have another rather remarkable invention. This was invented by William Thomas Sugg's son David, and this is still an open flame lamp, and the gas comes down the middle, and you can't easily see it, but there's a circular flame which turns around and goes back up. And they discovered that the heat from the burning gas actually warmed up the gas coming down and increased the performance. But these are very exotic, and as you can see, when I worked out what 8 to 11 guineas, I found that they really were for the wealthy. This, of course, is just a means of providing a sort of floodlight effect, maybe in a theatre. And you can just see in the single one a gas jet there made of ceramic, which was, but it's made of stuff called steatite, which is a naturally occurring material that was dug up in India and then machined on a lathe. This is the typical Sugg Argand burner, and look at the detail that was put into these things. And very often they were flashed with gold and so on to make them last a long way. And this circular bit takes the glass tube, and the other stuff, the other glass, fits around on those 3 points there. So here is a triple Christiania. Now, I should explain. The lamps that are called Christiania, and I have to point out there is an I in there because it was taken from the name of a princess, Christiania, who I think was Swedish or anyway. This just shows you the amazing thing. I mean, this is a gas lamp. Look at all that work that's gone in there to make sure the gas which comes along this pipe, a rubber pipe plugged into a local gas supply, comes all the way up here and burns inside there. And those 3 points support this piece of glass. There is another bowl here to hide the flame away, and up the middle you've got the tube. So there's the Christiania in its adjustable form, and we've got that 6 inches tall there. So what have we got? A foot, foot and a half, 2 foot, probably 3 feet tall. And the other one, of course, is also got a pipe stuck in there. And here's one which has got an eye screen, usually in red, to what they called non-actinic, not a word that we use these days, but it also has got all these junctions and joints through which they have to seal the gas. This rather beautiful early example of colour advertising, what it says is the burners chiefly in use only gave 1/2 of the illuminating power of the gas, and several tested by the gas referees gave only 1/4 the light of the gas. Note, similar burners are still very largely used. 1886. William had got a real thing about the fact that the burners that were cheap and nasty really simply wasted gas because they didn't burn properly. So here in the right-hand picture, you've got the same family, and it says 39 highest awards in 35, 40, anyway, for gas burners, lamps, and for domestic and public lighting, etc. Sugg's famous Christiania burner, the perfection of flat flame burners, each consuming 5 cubic feet of gas per hour. And what I like about it is that in this picture, this man, the same man, is just reading gas referee's report, and in this one, he's reading about lighting and cooking by gas. So never waste an opportunity to advertise. And here's some of the pieces of hand-painted glass that were used on these burners. And they also got quite fruity. It's a nice. The one on the back, on the left, is an actual burner, and on the right is part of a promotion for Christiania Governor burners. Even in France, and I perhaps haven't mentioned that William Thomas Suggs' wife was a Parisian, and they actually had a shop in Paris. So these are the same cards, but in French. And just so you're absolutely clear, in later days, when the mantle was invented, the upright mantle, for reasons that it's upright, was the most obvious thing to do. A mantle is made of a fabric soaked in a fluid which incandesces. And to start with, it has to be an aerated burner, so like a Bunsen burner, with the very high temperatures. So we went from gas, which had lots of carbon in it to give you light, to gas with a lot of temperature in it to give you the light that way round. And this, of course, is the inverted burner that you would have seen in more recent days. And amusingly, this wonderful fixture is still in existence in Arundel Town Hall. And I knew of its existence. The burners are a late addition. It's a Sugg burner assembly that's been put onto an old pendant. And I said to this lady, how do you like these things? And she says, oh, well, I just go over here and there's a cupboard just here with a tap in it. And she turned it on. And she then went back and lit this taper, which has got a drip catcher just there, and walked round lighting, because they're all producing gas at the same time. And it's 12 arms with 3 lights in each. So there are 36 gas lights running at the same time. You can imagine, by the time she got to the last one, it lit with one hell of a woof. And we, at Sugg Lighting, re-gas-lit the Crown Liquor Saloon in Belfast with its amazing plasterwork ceiling. It was later taken on by the National Trust, and I just love the picture of this man looking at his Guinness, ready to settle down. Gas cooking. Well, here we are. This is the multi-purpose Kitchener. They didn't use the word cooker for quite a while. And in this particular case, it's got a separate plate warmer there and a therma or water heater. You can see the water coming down here, collected. And also he's able to get some hot water in this bucket. And it does actually say, note, the roasting screen is omitted so that construction of the fire can be seen. So it's actually got a gas fire. And these little things along here are jets that point into these effective coals to light it up. But of course, you couldn't get very close to that, so it obviously had a screen in order to allow you to get closer. Now, Marie Jenny Sugg, or always known as Jenny, had these 12 children. And in the year after her last one was born, she was obviously bored to tears. So that in 1890, she wrote The Art of Cooking by Gas, which does appear to be the first book ever written specifically for gas appliances. And this is just a page out of it, showing the cordon bleu Kitchener. You see the meat is hung. It's never actually put on a shelf in this stage. They've got all sorts of odd bits and pieces here. And this is what is known as a Parisienne roaster. And it's actually like a barbecue. You have the handles to lift up, and it's being rotated by a water device. And this is rotating the unit. There'll be a little bit more about that later. So here we are. The four pictures around the outside are from her book, and you can see the coffee making device and hot water from the boiling stream therma, and it says here the Sykes globular coffee roaster, and you have to turn the handle whilst it's roasting away, so that, would you believe, they produced a steam version. If you want to ensure that your coffee beans were roasted for 20 minutes, you could buy this steam-operated motorized roaster, as, quote, "It is difficult to get servants to properly perform this tedious operation," in Jenny Suggs' Art of Cooking by Gas. This just gives you a little bit more. I mean, these are huge items. They had a foundry, they made all this stuff. It's quite extraordinary. And even the Royal Confectioner, as supplied to Windsor Castle, they have one of these in Buckingham Palace as well. It was saved for the museum, but when this particular museum went, I don't know what happened to the very heavy piece, but there you go, that's 1907 catalogue. And these are chef gas ranges. My grandmother had one of these. I remember it well. It's quite a good idea. You've got the oven up at a decent height, and you've got a grill as well. And that one is £18 4 shillings. And the one in the middle is only £14. And of course you've got the gas lights. This is a showroom from the outside. The Rochester, these are Littleton gas lights. So we can get on to a bit of gas heating. And I'm amused by Williamstock actually writing. I can only assume that somehow they managed to duplicate this, because it says, "Sir, this changeable season of the year, I beg to draw your attention to our new patent Charing Cross gas fires, which are considered to be the best yet produced. They are more comfortable and cleaner than coal fires. I enclose the circular," etc., etc. And PS says, "We send competent fitters to all parts of the country when required." And here we have it. Well, this is the most extraordinary thing. This mantle, this huge mantle, is actually something they would offer. There were two that I've ever seen, and they offer either the fire or the fire and the mantle. And in obviously on this left-hand side, you can see a much simpler device fitted into the fireplace. Clearly, as we all know, there was a great deal of problems over smoke and fog and smog, and these gas fires were one of the first ways of getting rid of the problem. They even have them for nurseries, bedrooms, libraries, drawing rooms, dining rooms, etc. And even log effect gas fires are not modern, but look at the quality of these ones. And a 1904 catalogue has the Charing Cross fires with both logs and coal effect. It's probably asbestos, which is interesting. And in the 30s, the Red Knight inset fires were very popular, and some of them have doors that you can close over to hide them away when they're not in use. And then we have probably the 50s with a lovely television set and an early stand-in-front type gas fire. This is the Queen fire that Suggs made. The Queen Convect Air was actually, it may not have looked wonderful, but it was really good from the convection point of view. And it was popular because A, it was cheap, and B, you get a lot of heat off it. So a bit of water heating. Now here's something for you. This is the Hygiene, a hydropathic high-pressure douche bath or shower cabinet. And this handle on the side here, you or your servant would rotate to build pressure up. And the hot water was put in the bottom, and it was pumped up to the top here and pressurized by winding the handle, so that when you climbed in and presumably turned on the taps, I think they're probably taps you can see down there, you got a high pressure shower, which and then you have your japanned bath, and there's the boiling stream therma. The text claims we were the first to introduce this form of heating water by gas and were awarded a silver medal at Crystal Palace in 1883. And here we have specially tapered baths, which are very comfortable in use apparently, and I imagine save a bit of water. But this one, the Sabrina, says now that the Great Eastern Railway Company are delivering Lowestoft seawater in kegs at any address in London at the rate of 6p per 3 gallons, it becomes possible to have a genuine saltwater bath at a reasonable cost. Even greater facilities than these will be obtained should the proposed aqueduct from Brighton ever become an accomplished fact. So, there you have it, underneath a gas burner, and the door you open and light, and I imagine this is where the flue was taken. So, in the museum, they had a rather nice little display with, I'm not sure whether he's decided that the bottom was a bit too hot or whether he's just settling in, but this is where the burner is on the bottom, and I can imagine that could get pretty hot. Famous projects. Well, Trafalgar Square I picked first. On the left is a picture of the column that you can quite clearly see is still in existence, a picture I took, and even the arms are the same. And this is a later version of a gas lamp converted to electric, not actually a SUG one, but never mind. On here you see these globe lamps, and if you go down to the embankment you see nowadays right below the London Eye and in all sorts of places this globe. Now the interesting thing about the globe is that it was designed to sit into a frame. The frame runs round the outside and the globe sits in and has little wheels that allow you to rotate the lamp. Initially the gas burner went straight up through and it was fixed in the arm or in the post, and it allowed you to rotate the globe. And the reason, because standing on the embankment it was impossible to clean the far side of the globe. So all you had to do was rotate the globe on its little wheels and you could wash the lamp on all sides. And some people say, well, why is it, when they see these? But of course, once the burners became bigger and then the electrics came on, you can no longer rotate them. So don't ask me how they actually wash them. They probably don't bother. Trafalgar Square itself had 3 original SUG lamps in it. These 3 here, which when the square was refurbished in 1988, and the architect asked us to make some. They're very big. Asked us to make some downscaled replicas. So these ones and this one are all slightly smaller than the very large versions are up here, but we put these up on new posts. The problem with Trafalgar Square is that it's right over the top of the underground. So the only way you could put up a post is to put a large steel plate immediately below the stonework. And that resulted in the fact that we had to take all sorts of stuff up there. So, as I say, you not often get the opportunity to drive onto Trafalgar Square with your van. Tower Bridge is another famous job of William Sugg & Company, and I found this picture in an envelope. It's a very small picture, but on the back it said that this man here on the left was the London representative, and this man here is the foreman responsible for this particular job. I don't know the other two, and of course you have policemen as well. And this is an interesting situation, because these are actually very like the Lambeth lamp that we saw quite some while ago on a post, but with the city device on top, and this is a larger one. And I have actually done a whole PowerPoint on the lighting of Tower Bridge, so if you ever want that, I can let you have it. So these ones were designed to throw the light onto the water and are outside the sides of the lift and lower bascules. But there's a lovely picture of the road leading up from the north, and as you can see, these lamps are empty. They haven't yet got their burners in, and the pipework is all being drawn along here and fed to all these lovely lamps, which are actually topped by the each one is topped by the device for the city. Gas supplies and evidence and wood blocks. Oh yes, that's right. It looks like there's some wood blocks there. This may well have had a wood blocked roadway. It certainly shows up in certain other locations. And this is the advert that was published in Building News on the 29th of June, the day before opening. And it says, Tower Bridge and its approaches are lighted entirely by gas by means of upwards of 200 Sugg's patent high-power flat-flame gas lamps. See, we're well before the days of mantles. All the work supplying and running gas and water mains, and supplying and fixing lamps, ornamental lamp standards, columns, hydrants, tanks, and hand pumps was carried out by William Sugg & Co. So that's the great story of the beginning. But the extraordinary thing is, if you go into the towers on either side, they have a semi-museum, and there you will find original Sugg lamps. The only thing that's been changed is the top of the lamp has lost its city system. And I suspect that what happened is that when the lamps were changed, and this comes out in my other story, they took the ones from these lamps, which have always been inside. They weren't actually ever mounted outside. They were actually mounted inside, along with all their matching ones outside. They took the ones off and put them onto the ones they had outside, and put what amounts to a basic cap and spike on top. It's also interesting to note that around the top of these lamps you can see some of the glazing that allowed light upwards. Early lamps are glazed at the top in order to throw light up into the rooms and buildings that people lived in with no light up the top at all. And then slowly the surfaces were first of all covered in an opal glass to act as some sort of a reflector, and then they were replaced entirely with a metal top. I suppose the 1901 order for Buckingham Palace was what Williamson called a signal order. And certainly the extraordinary thing is that these lamps are still on those front walls of Buckingham Palace, and British Gas maintenance men working on them, and some lovely pictures. The interesting thing about one of those lamps anyway, I don't know whether it's one of those or not, but during my time in Sag Lighting, when we were doing a lot of refurbishment work and so on, one day we had a desperate call from the palace to say that one of the lamps the ironwork had broken and it had fallen to the ground and was flattened and all the glass was broken. Fortunately, Her Majesty was away and she wasn't coming back for a few weeks, but they had to have it back before she returned. And I thought, well, that's quite something. So anyway, we did it. We actually managed to, well, we collected the old flattened one and then remade all the parts. And the only thing you could find that was very different was that where the glass, this opal glass, had to be made, the ones that had been there for years and years and years were heavily abraded by the atmosphere and the bombings and heaven knows what, whereas ours were bright and shiny, but I don't think anybody ever noticed. So thank goodness we got it back in time for Her Majesty. Under the canopy inside the quadrangle there's another one of those side globes, and actually all round the walls there's a series of lamps, all of which had to be refurbished in time for the last wedding. Or was it? No, I think it must have been William's wedding. And you can see the same arrangement is actually in this one for rotating. And that device there is a clockwork time clock. The man with his gas lighting post was replaced eventually by a pilot operated by a clock, so that you could turn on, well, the pilot stayed on and the clock turned on the gas off and on. But you still had to have a man to clean the glass, so even though they don't call them lamplighters anymore, I think they do get mostly called lamplighters, they're now sort of maintenance operators. And here you go, you have this big fella, which is the original, one of the original globes. That's actually in New Palace Yard. In front of the National Gallery, we made two lamps with open flames. They wanted actual open flames flickering away. And then we had a request to copy the original Barry design of gas lamp that they had along the front of the House of Lords. And the amazing thing is that when we looked at the drawings they had, such as they were, they only had one open flame inside it. And I said, well, you're giving us a problem, because they wanted the maximum light they could get, which was with a 6-light burner. That's a 6-mantle burner. And I thought, this is tricky. So we spoke with our glass supplier, who was giving us great service with most of these globes start off life as a chemical vessel, and this company was able to what it is, it's a globe with a lip on both ends. We had them modify it, and they wanted a lamp which was 16 inches in diameter, and the biggest one that was made was only 14 inches in diameter. So I said to them, no, I didn't say to them, I said, well, I'm sorry, it doesn't look as if we can do it. But the the glassman said, well, let me see if I can do anything. And what he did is he put the whole globe back into the leer and heated it up and then blew gently to increase the diameter from 14 to 16 inches. And that's why the glass has got sort of striations, lines of stress. And they said, well, I'm sorry, we have to we've got these marks. So I said, wonderful, makes it look really old. And so you will see even to this day, these lamps running beautifully. It's borosilicate, which is the high temperature glass that you would use for Pyrex. So that job was done by me in our Sugg lighting company, whereas of course these are William Sugg ones from the 1880s. And there we have the same man you saw on the other picture with his lamplighter's pole, attending to a Sugg Rochester in Westminster, suitably attired for the bicentenary in 2007. Just as a bit of entertainment, this is the Sugg works in World War I, and you can see it's a classic. This is in Vincent Works in Westminster. These pictures they're actually making wartime items, but all the overhead shafting, driving the belts and driving the machinery, and you'll have ladies and gentlemen working away, and mostly the men wore hats because if a belt broke, you could get a very nasty slap on the head. So I think that's probably the reason why quite a lot of people wear hats. In World War II, in the Blitz, in the beginning of the war, they suffered some horrendous damage. And you can see in this right-hand picture a machine that's dropped right through from the floor above, and its electric motor. But the biggest problem was this was the drawing office, which was on the roof. And unfortunately, all of the original drawings were destroyed. Well, I say all, I suppose it was all, because I had working for me a chap called Eric Petty, who had started work with Suggs immediately after the war. And his first job had been to go around the factory and pick up every copy of every drawing, of any drawing he could find, and redraw it. So if you look at many of the remaining drawings, you'll see the initials EP, and he drew like mad for months and months and months, redrawing. But he didn't redraw any of the earliest drawings because why bother? They weren't making them. So unfortunately, we don't have any original drawings of early stuff. But of course, I'm very fortunate in having a huge collection of literature. I showed this really because the lamp on the right shows the devices that were made for wartime application, so that you only got a tiny amount of light. All the literature that's like this was my dad, when he came back from the war, was given the job of not only technical director but also to look after publications, and so I can always recognize his because his got a lot of red and stuff, and on the back it's got lots of dimensional information. And they designed this lamp with these half round. You would have seen similar ones made in electric. The clever thing about these is that you can move the reflector around and even add a third reflector so that you can squirt the light down or round a corner. So, other appliances and equipment. This is just something I happen to have found, and I was amazed. These are display boxes, I am pretty sure. They don't exist on literature, but most of these are burners with governors on the bottom of them, and they have a manometer, and this little piece of pipe allows you to fit a burner on one and a manometer on the other, and you can set the flame size, because these are all open flame burners, you can set the flame size to precisely what it would be to demonstrate it to your customer with the pressure that is available. And they're such beautiful things that when they were of no use to anybody, people didn't throw them away. Sorry, people didn't throw them away. They put them in the loft. And so occasionally, and I happen to have found 3, these rather gorgeous items come on the market. So, other appliances. Would you believe? Belisha beacon, halt, keep left, and slow major road ahead. This actually device on top here is the gas light, lighting the front, as it is in here. In the keep left sign, you can see the gas burner and a clock and a system of ignition, which allowed you to turn it on and off by the clock. The Belisha beacon, I don't think was a success. It did work, but I've never seen anything more than a demonstration one, so I suspect that it was going one step too far. Of course, they were then trying to compete with the electricians, and still doing very well, but certain items such as that are tricky. Seems to want to end the show. Try again. But they did, even at Crystal Palace, produce a clock and electric call bells, morning, breakfast, lunch and dinner, designed for the purpose of assisting to maintain regularity in the household by giving automatic warning of the hours of rising and so on. And this entertaining little gadget is a small balance flue appliance. There's a little pilot light in there, which is sealed through the side of, this is one of those, you may remember these big iron cabinets that were on the roadwalk quite often, and they used to get very damp inside. So this gadget was made, and it's a balanced flue appliance. So this is the outside, this is the inside, seals everything off and just produces enough warmth to keep it out. Gas pokers. This is one of those pictures that I think you have to be asked to put a title to or something similar. These are the home service advisors who are demonstrating gas fires and pokers, and in fact this here is a well-known type of poker made by Suggs, and this is a screen fire which you could plug in. The ladies have a device that they're discussing, I think. Brass gas fittings, gas cocks, plug-in fittings, all sorts of stuff that many of you would have come across, and even a range of small gas-fired incinerators. Promotion. Well, they are headed paper, 1880s, 1900s, 1920s. In Williamsburg, of course, with this lot here, was always going to show you everything he could about what they did on his heady paper. Why not? And indeed, at this time, it looks like he's got 40 highest awards in open competition. And this one is the 1900s, and you can see the picture of the factory, the bigger factory. And then by the 1920s, we have a factory round the corner, where they've extended their factory to work, to give us more more facility. And the rear of the 1890s headed paper, the rear of it is extraordinary. It's absolutely covered in products, which makes it entertaining to look at. And here is their Crystal Palace stand with gigantic, I mean, this is a lamp, gas lamp there. And they got all sorts of medals and so on, which that's a set from that particular situation. The 1906 catalogue states that over 50,000 of the Windsor lamps are now in use. And seeing as that was not produced until 1898, that's pretty good going. It's even shown here, and you can see it's actually, this is a 1906 catalogue. It's actually got an upright mantle, and this little device at the bottom is an anti-vibrator. Mantles were so fragile that even traffic could break them, so they actually built an anti-vibrator. And this is the first lamp that Suggs designed for use with the gas mantle. It's determined to end the show. And this is just a list of everything they did. Plans and estimates for gasworks for mansions and factories, photometrical gas testing apparatus, Christiania we've been seeing, high pressure gas incandescent lighting for railway stations, stocks, market streets, patent inlet and outlet ventilators, we saw those, vertical flame ventilating sun burners, high power lights for theatres, town hall, churches, chapels, lamps for docks, wharfs, streets, buildings and sanitary works, electric fittings, surprisingly, and lighting, art, metal work, brass, iron and copper, gas and steam cooking and heating, gas and coke grills, gas ovens, roasters for large establishments, iron and brass carving, foundries, Westminster. So we had a foundry right in the middle of Westminster. And that's just a set of list 11 catalogues, all of which have roughly 40 pages in them, showing this amazing collection of stuff. And in the Festival of Britain in 1951, they made a little museum, and this is the invitation, of course, and new lamps for old, and there's the part of the museum that showed you that people could walk to the factory from the site. This little map showing you how to get there. This is the back of that, but I happen to have two versions, so I shared them at the same time. And here's some gas flambeaux. And there's the medal collection, which I still hold, and I need to do something with. Well, I need to do something with a lot of this stuff, and the archive, the City of Westminster Archive, has agreed to take everything, which is fabulous. These are showrooms, gas showrooms, which carried a lot of stuff by Suggs. That one there is one of those gas fires, but with the doors closed. The lamps are all Suggs. These are the Bon Marche gas fixtures. These are two exhibition stands at different places, and I spotted this one. This is Sir Edgar Sylvester at the Ideal Home exhibition, and he's holding a gas poker. Yes, well, why not? Parisian humour is always something to be amused by. And so is their French promotion, is a little more entertaining perhaps than ours. City connections, just to finish you off. Here we have William Suggs' 1891 Master's Medal, and the one that he would hang round his neck. George Allen, who was a son of William, was also a member, and he also got Freedom of the City, and it does actually say George Allen Sugg, son and late apprentice of William Thomas Sugg, citizen and glass seller of London. So there we have it all confirmed nicely. But you may be amused to learn that William's cousin, John Walter Sugg, was master of the clothworkers from 1896 to 1897. So we seem to have managed to gather a few notables in our time. And this is entertaining because it's all about the same people. This is a marriage certificate in which everybody is a Sugg. And working that out took me a little while, but John Walter Sugg, who is the clothworker, has married Rebecca Ann Sugg. Now it turns out that John Walter and Rebecca Ann were first cousins, so he married his first cousin, and William T. and Esther Sophia, who are the two here, William Thomas Sugg, Esther Sophia Sugg, were Rebecca's siblings. So they're all cousins of John Walter, and this is just showing you where his father, Henry, comes from, who's an undertaker, and there's William Sugg, who's gas engineer. I thought that was quite an entertaining little piece of unusualness. I don't know whether you're familiar with the past overseers. Past overseers, St Margaret's and St John's, Westminster. The overseers, of course, were the people who looked after the poor prior to local authorities doing so. And when it came to an end, the ones who were overseers didn't want to let it go, so they decided to meet. And they met, I don't know how many there were, a few, and they met, and one person brought a tobacco box, one person brought some wine, and they all had a great chat, and they decided they ought to do it again the following year. So somebody was given the job of making sure they bought these items, and they decided to write down what had happened, just a few words, on the tobacco box. And of course, this is how this particular society is often known as the Tobacco Box Society, because the same box still exists, but it ran out of space. So somebody produced a box into which the tobacco box would fit, and onto which they could put a silver item to be inscribed. And that is the start of an absolutely extraordinary collection of silverware. It's absolutely huge, and it's kept in the Bank of England because it must be worth unbelievable amounts. And every year there is inscribed on it something about what went on that particular year. And that's my father, P.C. Sugg. He was custodian. It's only a nominal place these days, but it's really meant to ensure that you make sure that the items are produced for what then becomes a dinner, of course, and they meet each year as the Past Overseers Society. So I can't see whether any of you know about that, but I thought it was one worth mentioning. Here's just a little bit of amusement to finish off nearly. This is the company, and just in the middle there is William. Sorry, I've gone too far. And this is the two cousins with their wives, and obviously, again, the two cousins with rather smart-looking bicycles. I imagine it's new technology. Up in this corner here is William's widow in widow's weeds. That's my grandfather, one of her later children, and that's my father. Sorry, that's my father, and that's his brother. So we have a sort of collection for you just to see. And inside the workshop, you see that they really did have some nicely dressed. I concluded that these pictures were likely to have been taken by an enthusiastic member of the staff, because actually in the one I've looked at before, it's quite sort of light here, which probably means it's a camera which is just sorry, a camera which is just a pinhole. So all I can tell you is that you can see some of the fires and the bits and pieces that we've talked about. So we're talking in the 1880s, and here the lady's doing similar things, and there are parts of lights and so on. And this young man here, I think, is a more set-up picture, but he's got a Lambeth lamp, actually a smaller version, because all these lamps were made in different sizes. You can actually see that it's got glass on the inside, and they've engraved the William Suggs logo on the side. And he's got a burner laying down there, which he is about to fit up there and pop inside to make sure that it works properly. So there we are. That is William Sugg, 1832 to 1907. If after all this you're not too bored and you're interested, you can go to William Sugg History. Actually, if I hit that, it probably will produce, yes, it will actually produce the website, so you can see what it looks like, and it's got all this stuff on, and you can go along there and you can look at collectors and enthusiasts. You can do all these sort of things and puddle down through bits and pieces, and you can even go to history and find out that I've written a history in the voice of William Thomas. Hello, my name is William Thomas, and I was born, and so on. So it's quite fun, and it's all written in different bits and pieces, showing you the co-partnerships and so on. And that, incidentally, is the wife, who must have been pretty tough, I should think, Elizabeth Aynsham. And there's various indentures and such, and there's the pictures you've already seen. So I will just show you one other thing, which is there. There is a 100-year booklet, which you can look at by flipping through the pages, and it shows you all the centenary things and some of the pictures we've seen, plus people who worked in the factories, and that's my father there, and my grandfather there.
I think absolutely amazing, Christopher. I think I know where the connection is. I think we could well explore it possibly, and the key to it would be our archivist is Edgar. It's the Mowlams.
Yes.
Right.
It's the Mowlams is the key.
Really?
Yes, I'm sure it is.
I think I can help you here.
Oh, good.
On the day that William Thomas Sugg joined the company,
yes,
which was the 19th of June, 1873, was the same day as George Burt joined the family.
Right.
Now, the Burt, Mowlam, and Freeman families were all interconnected.
Right.
So when I saw that your new building had been built by John Mowlam and Co.,
yes,
the people that he was coming across was George Burt Jr., William Robert Freeman, John Mowlam Burt, George Burt Sr., Joseph Freeman. There was a whole battalion of them, and what they did was to pave the streets of London, while the Sugg family was obviously erecting the lights in the streets of London.
Yes.
There was also at the same time builders called the Docra family,
Right.
DOWCRA, and 3 of their members were members of the glass sellers as well. So I think that is where your link is, that you were supplying the glass,
Yes.
the gas lights on
Yeah.
the streets that were being paved by the Burts, Molens and Freeman family.
Right. Now, are you in a position to do me a little note on that? Because
Yeah.
I'd like to add it to my website.
I need your email address, in which case.
Well, yes, okay.
Paul,
I can facilitate that. That's not a problem.
I'm sure that's easy, yes.
yeah,
And-
okay, will do.
And
Very
actually,
kind, thank you.
Christopher, Edgar's
Sorry,
actually.
it went on a little longer than your 20 minutes you asked me to do.
No. It's interesting because Edgar can actually send you a document that he wrote in conjunction with another person about the Molen dynasty.
Aha.
Quite fascinating.
Yeah.
Because Edgar and I have talked about it at great length, because they were originally from Swanage, which is where the stone came from for
Right.
paving. And it's absolutely incredible, the story. So if there's the link there, that will give you how it all sort of transpired. There was
Lovely.
a whole gang of them. And the family itself, I think, provided us over a period of time with 5 masters
Really?
from the Molen company.
What is that thing about that? Is that Paul?
Oh yes, it's worth having a look at. So absolutely splendid. And there, I think we found possibly the answer, which you didn't have, of how he ever got involved with the glass sellers.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
absolutely brilliant. Thank you. I think probably now we'll just ask the master to wind us up for tonight, because we have gone a little over our usual timing.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
No, but I mean fascinating.
Yes, excellent.
And that the lamps are still in operation to this day.
There are so many of them. Amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Master, over to you.
A quick question before I round off. What has happened to William Sugg & Company? Did it come to an end in 1969, or?
It's a very good question, actually, because I started Sugg Lighting because William Sugg & Company was taken over by the mighty Thorn Empire, Sir Jules Thorn,
Oh, yeah.
what became Thorn Electrical Industries and so on. And they were only interested in the heating equipment that we were then making in the Crawley factory, as it was, to cut a long story short, they had taken it over. Sir Jules, who was in his later days, wanted to have a bit of everything. So heating was one of his things, and he started a company which became Thorn Heating and pushed a number of people into it, including William Sugg & Company, which was very unfortunate as far as I was concerned, because I hadn't been at the business very long. I just moved the factory down to Crawley and was only working there a year or two before it got taken over. And they moved the whole lot to the northeast. Not that I got anything against the northeast, but I wasn't going to go and work up there. So with one colleague, I started again with a few people from the works group. So we had 6 people, and we started again. And one of them was the foreman, the original works foreman from Westminster. But only 3 months after we'd started, he went home one day and never came back. He died. So all of the original people who were there said, "Oh, well, that's it. You know, we might as well give up at this point." And I said, No. We're engineers, my colleague and I. We can survive. We can make these things." And it was at the time of conversion, and so we were making conversion sets effectively for the Sugg Company, but for Thorns, because there wasn't anybody else left who knew anything about it. So we made those, and that drove us almost directly into the 3-day week. So you recall, 3-day week when there was neither light nor electricity nor heat. And I said, hang on a minute, a gas lamp provides both light and heat. So we made very quickly an overhead gas lamp, like a sort of radiant heater. And we got onto television and into the newspaper, because by then we had about 10 or 12 people. And, you know, it was a small group against the world type situation. So the local paper took it up, and then it got translated elsewhere. And people would drive down for these particular, very simple appliances. And then we had a phone call from a interior designer who said, what about making those brass swan neck type fixtures? So I said, well, we rather thought we might try and make some more modern. No, he said, look, I'm working on a new set of steak bars, and I'm rather intrigued to gaslight them. So I said, oh, what are they? He said, oh, they're going to be called Beefeater. The very first 2 Beefeaters were actually gaslit, and they've just had their, well, a few years ago, had their 25th birthday, maybe 30th. Anyway, so that's what started it, and by that time we were making various replacements for original Sug appliances. We were doing some of those incinerators because that was one of the products that was still available, and we finished up becoming Sug lighting eventually, because we were over trading. We were making too many things, and it just wasn't possible to continue. So we sold off the bits that weren't relevant and became Sug lighting until I retired. And at retirement, because it wasn't the original company, we decided that the only way we were going to retire, because obviously as engineers you don't earn very much, we sold the business for a very modest sum to a company that we'd worked with before, and they then took it on as Sug lighting for only after 3 or 4 years, having moved from one place to another, to be run into the ground by a further owner who just wanted to asset strip. And the people who then ran it became so annoyed that they found somebody else, and there is now a new Williams Sug company. They've actually started a new Williams Sug company, and the Sug lighting company is no longer. So it's a recovery from the ashes, and hopefully, and they are still doing interesting work. So I'm sorry about that so long, but it is such an interesting one.
Very interesting. Christopher, thank you on behalf of the Glass Sellers.
You're more than welcome.
Absolutely fascinating scholarly review of the history of William Sug and Company, and just now its successors, Sug Lighting, and back to William Sug and Company.
That's right.
Yep. You have an astonishing archive of material there.
Yes.
So beautifully assembled. And I'm glad we've got Edgar in touch with you now to sort of enhance those links. And I'm sure the clerk will shortly be persuading you to join the Glass Sellers Company.
I'm getting a bit anxious for that.
You would be most welcome. But on behalf of us all, thank you for a fascinating evening.
Yeah.
It's really been delightful. So let's give a clap to Christopher.
Thank you very much. And thank you for organising it, Paul.
Well, thank you very much for playing ball. I think it's actually much more comprehensive than I possibly imagined, and it was really stunning. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Good.
Okay. Well, I think on that.
Good night, all. Happy Easter.
Yes, and happy Easter. Little bit unlocked down. Good.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I'd only say good night to everybody, and next week we're going to have a little talk by the Arts and Crafts winner of 2019, Ian Chadwick, who does a rather spectacular form of glass art, which you should find very, very fascinating. Meantime, have a pleasant evening and hopefully a wonderful Easter weekend. Good night.
Thank you all. Good
Happy
night.
Easter to you.
Happy Easter.
Good night, everybody.